Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Manager 2018 and the final part of this experiment where we take a look at what would happen if all players were released from 22 leagues with maximum reputation and maximum money. It's been a really interesting experiment up to now. I want you guys to know it took 2 days for me just to sim through 10 years in this save, so I haven't even got all the way to June because I was running out of time, which is why this video is up so late as well. I think this has to be the final part because I can't have another 4 days or however long it takes as the database grows and grows to go forward in time. But do drop a like on the video if you enjoyed this experiment, and make sure to let me know if you've got ideas for other experiments. There will be a brand new experiment out in 2 days time. But first off, we need to have a look at this database because we are now 20 years into the future, so there shouldn't really be any existing players still knocking around in the game. It should be completely overhauled so that when we look at the Premier League we should see some very different teams sitting in and around the top end of this table. So if we go on there now, you can see how long this is taking just to load up the database because there's been so many changes with so many leagues loaded as well. And at the moment, Manchester United winning it, but there's already a few different teams in here that I can spot. And this is actually better than when we tried to destroy the Premier League through removing all their money. You can see there are so many non-league teams now in the Premier League. You've got Dartford in there, Gateshead, Barrow, who else in there? Boston, Chorley, St Albans, Curzon Ashton are in there. They must have had a pretty meteoric rise. If we take them as an example and have a quick look, you can see they're in the regionals until even as late as 21-22, and then they've rocketed all the way up into the Championship. A bit of time there, got up, and have since gone back down. But a huge rise for a team like that to come up from the regional leagues all the way to the top. You can see that Manchester City only beat Dartford to the title on goal difference. They had the same record across everything except for more goals scored. So huge achievement for Dartford there, and Gateshead also in the Champions League. Be interested to see if either of those teams win it. Obviously, when we left off last time, Burnley and Everton were the teams doing well in the Premier League, but that obviously wasn't the continued case. Burnley there you see winning the Premier League, and North Ferriby getting relegated with Bromley down there as well. Everton got relegated in this season here, but Manchester United did win the league title. Man City won it the year before. Burnley then won it again. United, Everton, and then you had the Everton and Burnley little sort of to and fro. If we look at the past winners overall, you can see Burnley now 6 titles under their belt. United have come back to form with 4. City are up there with a couple. Everton now relegated despite 4 Premier League titles to their name. But so nice to see a couple of non-league teams showing up on the winners sort of page or past winners page of the Premier League. That is really encouraging to see, I have to say. If we go back up to the season before last and drop down into the Championship, then we can see, again, absolutely dominated by non-league teams. So many big clubs having dropped all the way down. You can see Chelsea down here. Which big teams are not in the Premier League anymore? So I think Liverpool are missing, Chelsea are missing, Spurs are in there, Arsenal are in there, United are in there, and Manchester City are also in there. So we want to keep an eye out for where Liverpool have ended up, really. You can see Chelsea right at the bottom of the league at the moment in the current season. The season before, though, they did finish in 9th place. Everton finished in 10th. The year before that, still no sign of Liverpool, but West Brom and Southampton all the way down there at the bottom of the league table. The year before, Cardiff also down there as well. When did Liverpool get relegated? It must have been some time ago. If we just keep drifting back, you can see they actually got relegated quite some time ago, 6 years ago, so they could have fallen very far. If we go back to the 35-36 season and drop down to League One, you can see Liverpool flirting with relegation in League One now. They have dropped so far down. Did they ever drop into League Two? That's a question. League One is the lowest that they've fallen, but given they were winners of the Premier League in 18-19 right at the start of this experiment, they haven't half fallen hard all the way down there. Not doing very well at all. If we go down one more league, which I think is the lowest league we have loaded, and then just sort of go back a couple of seasons, you can see Sunderland, gratefully for me, thankfully to me, got relegated from Sky Bet League 2 there by 5 points from Cambridge and EC. So some Premier League teams have fallen all the way down. If we look at the National League and just look for any Premier League teams in the top end of that, nobody there. National League North, Coventry, runner-up in the National League North. Any other big teams down there? Not that I can see. And if we go into the South League, again, nobody really there that I can see. But certainly interested in the way that has panned out for the English Pyramid. It has changed a lot more than I expected, especially Dartford and Gateshead at the top. And that's got to be because of the playing squad that they have. And the fact that it all used to be greyed out. I'd be stunned if it was still greyed out, and as you can see, they have signed some of the best players in the world now. Interesting, they've got Henrik Larsson as their Premier League manager, second in the league as well, so doing very, very well there. That's a sensational rise. Obviously, they're greyed out players, carrying them so far right to the top, and then winning they're actually second there. They've missed out twice now as runners-up. And not won the Premier League, but sensational stuff to have done so well. Now, if we go back to the profile of the Premier League and have a look where it ranks overall, you can see the English teams back at the top. The reputation is in a never-ending cycle of being perfect because of the high reputation clubs and the high reputation leagues. It's impossible for them to fall down, so you'll see a lot of switching here of the big leagues. If we have a look at League we're not going to spend too much time on this. We're just going to look at the past winners really and see if their football pyramid has been upturned or not. And as you can see, it really, really hasn't, except for a couple of years where Nice and then a couple of years where Bordeaux managed to win the title. It has been PSG and Monaco every year outside of that. They have established their dominance, as they always have, at the top of the league. Ever since the money came in, and despite all of the changes to this database, they have continued to keep winning the big competitions, which is quite disappointing really. We're going to need to go to the full competition reputation screen just to get past all the English leagues, and then we can have a look at the Bundesliga and the teams that have won that over the last 10 years. And you can see that there has been a bit more change here. Köln had a nice run right at the start. Dortmund did well. Bayern came back for a long time, but since then it's been Hanover and Stuttgart with a couple of titles. Hanover now with 5 titles, only matched by Bayern Munich since we changed this up. So there has been a bit of an upturn there, but no lower league teams finishing at the top end here like we have seen in the Premier League. And that's disappointing that we haven't seen that in the French or German leagues. Have we seen it in Serie A? Well, there has been a bit more change in the Italian league. You can see that Spal have done so well. They had a couple of years finishing third, then they managed to get to second, and then they did finally win the title. But Juventus and Inter have totally dominated this league outside of that. Only 1 year that those two teams haven't won it, and that goes all the way back to the 2011-2012 season. So that's 24 years with only one other team winning the title. That's outrageous. But fortunately, we have seen Brescia come much closer at the top, finishing just off into there in the 33-34 season. And Spal have had several running up years. Lazio weren't far off right at the start, nor were Udinese. But unfortunately, nobody able to break the dominance there. And finally, if we look at the Spanish First Division, we can see the dominance has been broken. You saw Vigo stop Barcelona right at the start. Girona won it the very first year, but finally Coruña have come from nowhere to win it the last 2 years. Deportivo La Coruña getting 2 back-to-back titles, certainly pretty good for them. After actually dropping into Division 2, they bounced back and have really gone on a nice ascent to the top with Diego Simeone in charge. Brilliant stuff there. Still a manager at this point, although he would be still quite young. We haven't gone that far into the future, but quite impressive. The Serbian Super League we'll have a quick look at. I mean, I don't understand enough about this league to really talk about it very much. But for those of you that are Serbian fans, here you go. We can have a look at the past winners, and Spartak have just cleaned up for so long. They are undisputed champions of Serbia, and in the Swedish Premier League, if we look at the past winners here, actually a lot more change. The Swedish league has been without doubt the most fascinating of all of the leagues because they've achieved so much with the players and teams that they've got. And finally, in the Portuguese league, if you do want to look at these in more detail, you can just pause the screen. You'll be able to see everything. Past winners in Portugal, Chaves and Portimonense are the teams that have broken the dominance. Aves were the first team to do it way back, Rio Aves. But Sporting in there, no sign of Porto. They finished third place a few times, runners-up a few times, but they have not won the league since 2012-13, so disappointing for them in Portugal. But overall, you can see the impact of this has been very limited, except for in England. Everywhere else has been pretty much exactly the same. Now, if we go to the Champions League, this is where we're really interested to see if anybody broke the big dominance. We saw that Burnley won it quite a few times, and if we go to the past winners screen, you can see Bordeaux have won the title. They're an unexpected winner. You've got Stuttgart winning it. They were unexpected. But even then, other than Burnley, there is nobody in here that I would say wouldn't have been with a shout of winning this competition had it just progressed normally. Burnley are genuinely the only team in there that surprised me a lot, because even Bordeaux and Stuttgart, with the right manager, a bit of money, maybe a new sugar daddy coming in, could at some point win the Champions League in a normal save, especially 20 years in. But Burnley did it in 1920 season, and even then they were an established Premier League team at this point. So it's disappointing that none of the newly promoted English teams managed to make it that far in the Champions League. It only would have been in the last couple of seasons, and you can see at this stage here, no major surprises. The year before, you've got Spartak Brescia there, Numancia from Spain. Year before that, are any of the English teams surprising? Absolutely none of them. Burnley, Man City, the only English teams. City, Aston Villa did reach this point, but they have won the competition in the past. City, United, Burnley, Man City again. It's the same teams year after year after year. No surprises whatsoever. None of the non-league teams making it to this point. And that's my real big disappointment, is that nobody broke the Champions League dominance. It's a very different story in the Europa League, I imagine. But even here, Manchester United, Barcelona, Real Madrid, but Burnley have won it a couple of times. Spartak have won it for Serbia. Lewins IS, who on earth are they? They are Swedish Premier Division seed. You can see the way they've risen up the ranks as well. So nice for them to win it, and actually win this Premier Division in Sweden as well around the same time. Nantes have won it, Spal have won it, Arsenal have won it, Everton, Juventus, Liverpool, and then you go back to the original Swedish team. So there's been a bit more variation in the Europa League, but not quite as much as I would have liked, and it's so disappointing they didn't manage to do it in the Champions League, I have to say, because I wanted to see the dominance broken there. It's nice that we've seen in the Premier League things have changed up a little bit, but for it not to happen overall is quite disappointing. If we just have a look at some of the key players in world football at the moment, for those of you that are interested, you can see £71 million Frenchman Bouafia. He has got some cracking stats on him. 16 finishing for an attacking midfielder, 20 composure as well. Very, very good player. Yannick Viatel, where does he play? He is French as well, so the French doing very well. George McCarthy from Barcelona. He's Welsh, which is quite interesting. He's got very, very good stats there. Where on earth did he come from? He actually came from Cardiff, made a £108 million move to Doncaster in the Vanarama North from the Premier League, as you do. 45 million back to the Championship, 68 to League 2, 67 back to the Premier League, 89 to League and then finally 63 million to Barcelona. Combined transfers, £440 million. You've got Steve Seddon. Where's he from? He's English. Again, another player to have bounced around a bit going into the Championship, back to the Premier League. He was a bit more normal, ended up at PSG and has been there for quite a while since. Any other very English-looking names down here? You've got Julian Mitchell. He's English as well. Another player, Championship, switching around for big money in the Championship, moved to the Premier League and then moved to Stuttgart. And finally, there's Peter Phillips, also at Barcelona. £43.5 million, 32 years old though. He actually was in the Premier League the whole time, and then £168 million transfer to Inter Milan, moved on to France for 65 and then 77 to Spain. So he has won, hopefully, quite a lot of competitions there. If we look at his milestones and his awards, I guess, his biography would be best actually. You can see Serie A, the International League with England, European Champions Cup Barcelona, Europa League, European Super Cup a couple of times, Spanish Cup and Spanish Super Cup. Not won as many competitions as you would expect for a player who's shifted around quite as much as he has. But what we really want to look at are all the world transfers, and if we change it to leading transfers, can we arrange the most expensive of all time? And you can see Vinicius Jr., the only player to break the £200 million barrier. I don't think this is all of them though, which is a little bit frustrating. I'm not sure how we would narrow it down to figure out what the most expensive transfer of all time was. We could look at all transfers, but even then you've got to go at it by month instead of anything else, and I don't really want to have to cycle back through hundreds and hundreds of months. So we'll have to say that the 200 million was just the biggest. I can do this really quickly, and maybe somebody can pause it and let me know if there is a big thing here, but I think generally it's going to take far too long to go back, and 200 million is quite an impressive rate to have been set for the world's biggest transfer. But I think there's another sign. I had this in the experiment where I was trying to destroy the Premier League, where the amount of money, £1 billion, that we gave different teams, or actually it was when we gave Boston all the money to try and make them into the best team in the Premier League, when we gave them all that money, it wasn't enough. We gave them billions and billions, and it just wasn't enough because transfer fees are so inflated now. It's in the real world more than anything else, and the game just can't compete. It needs to update its figures. You can see Vinicius Jr., definitely the biggest transfer in the game, and it really should have been more than 200 million given how much money we've pumped into this game, but that never happened, and I think it's something Football Manager need to look at ahead of the next game coming out. The only other thing to look at is the World Cup winners and where young players coming through have done the difference for these teams. And you can see heartbreak for England, 2 World Cups in a row, finishing runner-up. They were actually third the World Cup before that as well. Can you imagine losing to Denmark in the final of the World Cup as an English fan? World Cup moving around a little bit as well. So Uruguay won it the first time in Russia, then Spain won it in Australia, Italy in the USA, Denmark in Spain, and then France won it in Japan. France, we've seen, have already got some world-class players, and they've carried that through to lift the World Cup as well. All those players that we were looking at before. If we look at their national team, just very quickly, I'm just going completely off on different tangents here, but hopefully you'll find it interesting too. If we sort them by their general info and value, you can see there are 4 players there worth over £70 million and a couple that are only just off it. That is a very expensive national team, and no surprise that they've done as well as they have done. But I think that is going to be it, because I'm not really sure what else there is to look at. But if you've enjoyed this experiment, and well done to those of you that have seen every part up to the final one, do drop a like on the video and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, so that you can see the new experiment when it comes out in 2 days time. You can also support the channel on the website jenkaldo.com, or on Twitter or on Patreon using the links down below. But until next time, see ya.